Hi, Chris here, and I've been asked a few times to go over the shifting on the Lectric XP 2.0. So I'm going to cover exactly what happens when you shift, why sometimes when you shift it's instant and sometimes it lags a little bit, some recommendations for how to shift. So first I want to head inside and show you exactly what's going on with your gears and the chain and how this bike actually shifts. So this is the stock freewheel and rear derailleur that comes on the Lectric XP. This is the Shimano Tourney rear derailleur. Mine are off the bike because I have since upgraded both of these, and I will leave links in the description below to those videos if you want to upgrade these. But these are what come on it. They work perfectly fine. They're pretty basic. I do highly recommend at least changing the freewheel. The downside of this one is that this smallest ring right here is a 14 tooth and this biggest one is a 28 tooth. And you can upgrade this so that the small one's an 11 and this big one's a 34. So it'll give you better higher gears and better lower gears. But to show you, if you've just recently bought a Lectric XP, this is the freewheel that's going to be on it. And the reason I'm showing it to you is just to kind of show up close. When you shift a gear and this derailleur moves the chain, it doesn't just shove the chain over into a new gear. It does reposition the chain, but if you look closely, you'll see these little cutouts and grooves in here. There's like one right here, and then another right there, and they kind of go in this wave along the side, all the way up to this bigger one right there. And when you shift the chain, it's actually going to spin until it hits these are called ramps. And then the chain will go up this little ramp and then it'll slip on. And you'll see there's a set of ramps that go up along this side. And if I spin this, there's more little ramp right there and a ramp there. And then on the other side, there's a whole nother set that'll go the whole way. And this is a pretty basic freewheel, so it really only has 2 full sets of ramps. Higher end freewheels will have more than that. And when you shift, it just changes on those ramps. That's why sometimes it feels like it shifts real quickly and other times it doesn't shift quite as fast. But I just wanted to show you this freewheel and this rear derailleur because these are probably what you'll see on your bike unless you've done the upgrades. When I show the camera on my bike doing the actual shifting, you'll see the upgraded freewheel and the upgraded rear derailleur. So we can head over to that right now. Now I'm over here at my Lectric XP and you can see I've upgraded to the Shimano Acera rear derailleur, which is just a much nicer rear derailleur and it works a whole lot better, especially if you've upgraded this freewheel. And you can see on this freewheel now I have a much smaller high gear and a much bigger low gear. You can see the ramps on this big one here. See, there's a big ramp and another ramp and another ramp. And then if I spin it, there's another ramp on this high one and another ramp here. And we're kind of ramps all over. So when you see more of these ramps, it's just more shift aids for this chain to move along. So it's going to shift a lot smoother. And then this Shimano rear derailleur, the Acera, is much more metal. This whole back end is metal, where like on this one, the Tourney rear derailleur, this whole back piece right here is all plasticky. So this Acera one is just a much better upgrade. And I have a whole video on how you can install both of these if you like. Now I'm going to go out and I will show you how the chain moves and shifts and give you some recommendations on how you can shift your bike properly. And just to kind of give you an overall guide as to everything that's going on down in here when you shift your gears and how to shift them the smoothest and what gears you should be in and all that kind of fun. So let's head to it. So this is the shifter out here on the Lectric XP. You can see it's just a double thummy kind of shifter. So when you push this knob, you're actually going into the easier gears. And then when you hit this little button, and you can actually see there's like a little plus on it, these are going into the higher gears. So there's 7 gears total. 1's the easiest, 7 is the highest or hardest, I guess you could say. You just shift into higher gears as you gain speed. Let's hop on the bike and I will go through some of the shifting and show you while I'm shifting exactly what's happening down below and what's going on your gears back here. So the first tip I can give you when you're out riding is just to know that your gears are only going to shift when you're pedaling. The chain itself has to be moving. It won't just shift if you click it, even if the bike's moving. So the chain has to be moving, so you need to be pedaling just a little bit, but you don't want to be pushing as hard as possible on the chain. You just want to be pushing gently on the chain and then shift while you're pedaling. And with electric bikes, it is definitely best to shift one gear at a time. So you can see as I go through each individual gear, the chain, the derailleur will move first, and then the chain will move as it hits one of those ramps that I was pointing at. And you can click relatively quickly. So if I'm all the way down here in the highest gear, and then if I hit like a big hill and I want to shift through all the gears really quickly, I just start pedaling gently and I can shift right up through all the gears and it'll go into that biggest gear that it's on now. And this is my lowest gear. So another great tip is to shift down into these lower gears. You may not have to be all the way in your very lowest gear, but you want to shift into a lower gear anytime that you come to a stop. That way when you're already at the stop, when you start off again, you're already in that lower gear, and it's a lot easier to start pedaling, and then just as you gain speed, you can start to shift into higher gears. And if you can, it's always good to just shift one gear at a time so that your chain doesn't get too hung up, and it'll help make your chain last longer and it'll make your gears last longer, because your chain and your gears will wear out over time and they'll need to be replaced. But the more gently you can shift, the longer you can let that last. And another good tip, anytime that you're coming up to a steep incline, it's best to shift down into lower gears before you get to the hill, so you're already in the lower gears and it's easier to pedal before you have to climb up a steeper incline. If you're in a really high gear and then you hit the steep incline and then have to shift into the lower gears, you can see as I'm shifting, when I shift into lower gears, the chain's actually going into bigger gears in the back, or the lower gears. So if you have to shift under a lot of force because you're going up a hill and you're pushing the chain and the chain's trying to go into a bigger gear, sometimes it can get kind of jammed up and not want to go. So it's best just before you get to a hill to shift down into the lower gears, and then you're just in a good gear by the time that you actually get to the hill. So kind of a good thing to note. Another key thing that's obviously really good for shifting is if your shifter and your rear derailleur are adjusted properly. So if you're still using the Shimano Tourney rear derailleur, I have a full video on my channel and I'll leave a link in the description below to how you can adjust that derailleur and get it dialed in just perfect. And then I'll be adding another video to my channel soon on how to adjust this Shimano Acera derailleur. Pretty much exactly the same as the Tourney derailleur. It's just that the limiter screws are in a slightly different spot. And if you have upgraded your freewheel, you can see that when I'm in the easiest gear, it's that big giant one that's back there. So when I shift up one gear into gear number 2, it's actually a pretty big jump between 1 and 2. As I shift here between 1, I'm in 1 right now, and then it jumps to 2. So it's best to always shift between 1 and 2 real gently to make that big jump, but it has those really good ramps on it, so it shifts pretty smoothly, especially if you have the new Shimano Acera derailleur. It should just jump between these two real easily like it's doing right now. So just to recap what I went over, before you come to a stop, shift down into lower gears so that when you do come to a nice stop, you're already in the lower gears on your shifter. That way when you get going again, it's a whole lot easier just to start pedaling, and then you can just quickly shift into the higher gears as you get some speed again. And then another good time to shift down into lower gears is when you have to hit a big steep incline, is shift down into the lower gears before you get to the incline. Don't get caught and have to try to shift into the lower gears while you're on the incline, because it can be a lot more challenging to do that. And then just always be pedaling gently while you're shifting. Try not to shift when you're what we call under load. So when you're pedaling super hard, you don't want to be shifting when you're pedaling really, really hard. You just need to be moving the chain gently enough, and then push the shifter, and then the chain will switch it nicely into a gear. So hopefully that helps clear up some stuff about shifting. If you have any other questions about shifting, just leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.